Good evening and welcome to the November 8th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you in the audience with us. We're glad to have those that are at home watching on TV. At this time, I'm going to ask two principals, Ms. Bell, principal at Hobgood Elementary, and also Ms. Shields, principal at Mitchell Nielsen, to come forward, please, if you would, and introduce us to us tonight, our young people who are going to lead us in our pledge. We then will have our pledge followed by our moment of silence. Ms. Bell?
Good evening. Tonight we have kindergarten student Aoske Clifton Johnson to do the pledge for Hobgood.
Good evening, everyone. And from Mitchell Nielsen, we have two scholars with us here tonight. We have Elias Espejo and Estefania Espejo.
And now our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. While I know we have an audience here and we also have an audience at home, I would encourage those of you who have not voted to get up and go quickly. Maybe by 7 o'clock, if you're in line, you can vote. If you have not already voted, and I hope that you have. All right, members of the board, you have seen a copy of the agenda. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda as written, please.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any question or comment? I see none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And I see none. Communications. Ms. Trail?
I only had someone shorter than me up here, so. Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to start out with a few just congratulations. Scales Elementary teacher Andrea Tusnot was nominated by a member of the community for being an outstanding teacher and was selected as the Teacher of the Month by Farmers Insurance Agency. Additionally, Ms. Krista Campbell, sixth grade teacher at Discovery School, was nominated for the WGNS Doug Young Educator of the Month, which was just announced on our way here.
Wow.
So congratulations to both of these teachers. Also on November 2nd, the Middle Tennessee STEM Innovation Hub meeting had an innovator educator workshops for elementary educators. The focus was on programming for elementary, and the presenters included 6 of our very own teachers from Murfreesboro City Schools. Specifically, most of them came from Overall Creek. They were speaking about Curiosity Didn't Kill This Cat, Teaching with Inquiry, Mallory Eaton and Tamara Cosby, Integration All Day with STEAM, Taylor Brown and Cherry Ross. Into the Deep, Robotics in the Elementary was Chris Penrose. And then Robust Engineering in the Elementary Classroom, Leah Barch. So we are always proud when our teachers are getting up and presenting at state and regional levels and teaching others how we're doing it here at Murfreesboro City Schools. Also, congratulations to Salem Elementary on the installation of their new outdoor classroom. This was a PTO-funded project, and if you have not seen it, it is absolutely gorgeous. If you want to drive by there any day or weekend, evenings, what I'm trying to get out of there, it's on the right-hand side. Just go to the right-hand side of the elementary, and it's right beside that natural water that's there. So it's going to be a great educational experience. We love our PTOs. Northfield Elementary is hosting an alumni night on Thursday, November 10th. Alumni will be recognized between the JV and varsity basketball games. So if you know any Northfield alumni, we would love to have them at that game. Congratulations to Hobgood's 5th and 6th grade students on their radial symmetrical paper sculptures. It was an art display and art show that was held last month. It's being taken down this week at MTSU's Todd Hall. It was fabulous. Just so proud of those students and Miss Dee Dee Potter that led the way on that. The Bradley Academy Choir, if y'all were on the City Hall this past weekend, you heard them Saturday at the Cooking to Build fundraiser. They sounded amazing in the rain, under a tent, whichever way you want to give them. They did a great job. And also, Discovery School applications are now open. So anyone that is wanting to apply for Discovery School, whether it's a kindergarten student through 6th grade student, those applications are online now. There's school tours that are already planned. Go to the City Schools website or to Discovery School Explorers website to find out more about what to do to apply for school. And again, that's for kindergarten as well as 1st, 2nd through 6th grade. American Education Week is next week, November 13th through 19th. I would ask you all to join me in celebrating our teachers, our EAs, our bus drivers, our maintenance workers, all the people who make our district special. So we will be delivering a few goodies next week, and I know that other PTOs as well as community members will be helping us celebrate American Education Week. Now, on to inclement weather and school closings. So, snow days are here. I honestly work more than snow days, but although teachers only know me then. For school closing information, please be sure that phone numbers and informations are correct in the parent portal. That would be for our staff members as well as all of our parents. That is the way we get in touch with you. So for parents, please make sure your information is updated. If emails have changed, if cell phone numbers have changed, we need to know that. The initial information regarding inclement weather appears on our social media, so it appears on Facebook and Twitter first. An all call is sent. We also let our local station, City TV, is one of the first that gets the information, WGNS, our local newspaper, and then we feed it out to those Nashville stations as well. So that's the way we do it. ESP does follow a different inclement weather policy, and they always keep their website posted and updated. So ESP is open the majority of the time, but they do have different hours when we're off for a snow day because we will make sure that we take care of those staff members as well. So that is the inclement weather. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good information. All right, Dr. Duke, the best of Murfreesboro City Schools.
Good evening, everyone. We are so excited tonight to present our Best of MCS recognition to someone who is not new to our district this year, but is serving in a new role. And I would like to invite Katie Johnson to join me at the podium, please. And I'm going to ask Ms. Cox, her principal, to come up as well. Last year, Murfreesboro City Schools applied for and was awarded a grant from the United Way to implement a Supports for Success space at Case Lane Academy. The Supports for Success room is a designated space within the school that provides short-term, trauma-informed de-escalation and restorative support for the students who are in need or in conflict as a preventative measure to help ensure learning continues in the classroom. The goal of this program is to provide a brief intervention between 10 and 15 minutes that supports de-escalation of intense behaviors and/or emotions, teaches self-regulation skills, and fosters the successful re-entry of students into their learning environment, thus reducing interruptions in instruction for all students and office referrals. This pilot program has been at Case and Lane, and Ms. Johnson has been serving as the Supports for Success coach this year. Ms. Johnson started at Case and Lane in 2019, and this is her 4th year at the school. When I asked her about this role, she says, "I have been truly blessed and honored to work with some of the best administrators and team here at Case and Lane. I enjoy that this role has given me and others the opportunities to collaborate and use various strategies to ensure further success in our students. I feel the benefit of the new role is that students receive more individualized calming and coping strategies for them to meet their personal success in the classroom setting." And I asked Ms. Cox to join us as well because she actually is the one who nominated Ms. Johnson for this award because of the difference that she is seeing in her students on a daily basis because of the good work Ms. Johnson's doing. And I was actually at Case and Lane the other day, and I was talking to Ms. Cox about it, and she says that Ms. Johnson's probably one of the busiest people in the school because she just has that attitude to get it done and make sure our kids are taken care of. So thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your commitment to MCS and Case and Lane and your willingness to help all students. Your support is ensuring more children are ready to learn each day, and for that we are very grateful. So thank you for representing the best of MCS.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Ms. Johnson, for the work well done. Spotlight on education.
Yes, sir. In our current strategic plan, we have objectives aligned to ensuring we are recruiting and retaining highly effective and culturally competent employees so that our students receive the best instruction each day. One of our strategies to help achieve this goal is the operation of our Murfreesboro City School Diversity Task Force. Dr. Miriam Hill actually started this work immediately before COVID and worked with this group through the pandemic. This year, Ms. Johnson has taken on this responsibility in her new role in our HR department. I've asked Ms. Johnson to provide the board an update on the work being done this year in this area.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for providing me with the time to highlight Murfreesboro City Schools Equity, Diversity, and Task Force. As you know, the city of Murfreesboro and Murfreesboro City Schools are growing rapidly. And with that growth, we've seen an increase in our diverse population of students. And as you know, the mission of Murfreesboro City Schools is to assure academic and personal success for each child. So in 2020, Murfreesboro City Schools established the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Task Force to continue to establish the partnership with our Murfreesboro community leaders. This task force is composed of our director of schools, leaders from throughout the community, school administrators, district personnel, and teacher representatives. Over the last 2 years, Murfreesboro City Schools has met with the task force to analyze multiple forms of data, from TCAP and absenteeism to the demographic ratios of our students and our district faculty. From this data, we created an overarching goal for the year, identify barriers and challenges, and then develop objectives and measurable action steps to address each of the objectives. We also use these collaborative meetings with the task force to determine how our community partners can assist the district with relaying the message of the importance of daily school attendance, as well as parental involvement is essential in their child's academic growth. If you look at your screen this year, this is what the Equity, Diversity, and Task Force team developed this year. Our overarching goal is to decrease the academic achievement gap of our diverse population of students by eliminating contributing barriers. The barriers we identified from our data were our chronic absenteeism, inconsistent parental involvement and assistance at home, and the level of knowledge for all as far as cultural competence in our school practices. Also, the demographics of our students are not reflective of the demographics of our educators in the district. So some of the objectives that we developed to help with these barriers, one was to address school attendance. We look at each school and some of the attendance incentives that they have and how community members and stakeholders can help with those. We also looked at the recruitment strategies for our diverse educators and how we can continue to go out and recruit highly qualified diverse educators to bring to Murfreesboro City Schools. We also are looking at continued cultural competence training for all of our staffs, and this won't be a one-time training, but continued training throughout the year. We also revisited the interventions that are being provided to students that are not making the academic gains of their typical peers. So these are some of the things that we looked at for this school year. Also, I'm really excited to talk about this one. One of the recommendations from last year's task force was the creation of an affinity group. As a result, Murfreesboro City Schools developed the Lead and Inspire Network. This is an affinity group for our diverse certified employees. This network was started to provide our underrepresented population of diverse educators with the opportunity to come together as a group. We held our first meeting in September and we had over 70 participants. At this session, we highlighted the strengths of Murfreesboro City Schools when looking at equity of instruction and our inclusive learning environments in schools across the district. We also identified focus areas such as the need for interpreters and mentorship programs and leadership opportunities. We're planning to do a book study in December that continues to discuss our discussion around viewing the equity of instruction and our inclusive school learning environment through an equity lens. So these are two programs that Murfreesboro City Schools has, our Equity Diversity Task Force and our Lead and Inspire Network, to help us continue to look at everything we're providing through the lens of equity.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir, you may.
I just want to thank you very much for spotlighting all the important work that's happening in our schools and showing to the community at large that we're taking every step to make sure that every child is known, safe, empowered, and challenged. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Settles?
The first question, is that Elizabeth Taylor right there? Is that her? It is. Okay, I just want to be sure, because I thought that was her on there. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Johnson. So you mentioned cultural competency training. Talk a little bit more about that. And I have a reason, this is something that you're doing for the educators, right?
Yes.
Okay. And, I mean, does somebody come in and you do a 2-day? I mean, how does it work?
Well, previously, we've used several different things. Ariel Mosley has completed several cultural competency trainings with various schools. We're also looking at different representatives, our speakers that will come in as well in the spring to possibly do a presentation that will be available to all staff. And that's where we want to make sure that the instruction that we're providing is quality instruction, and with quality comes equity.
Yeah, and it's voluntary, you don't,
Yes.
It's not mandatory that you got to go.
Initially, we did it as a faculty principal that wanted to have it in their schools. It was a faculty training, but we're looking in the spring that it would be voluntary. So if someone wanted additional training on cultural competency, they will be able to sign up.
Thank you.
And I will say, add to one of the things Maria has really done with this group this year, and again, Dr. Hill started this and Maria's done a great job picking it up, is one of the real benefits I see when we go to some of our meetings is the engagement with our community partners. And the engagement for them to hear, these are some of the issues and concerns we're struggling with, and these are things we're trying to problem solve. And we've really seen some great examples of our community leaders, when they know, say, okay, in my sphere of influence, here's how I can benefit. In my sphere of influence, here's how I can make a difference, to make sure they're not just hearing messages from the school system, but from the local pastor or community leaders that may be involved in that. So it's been a really positive impact just to get our community more involved, again, in this work.
So the community, you're like reaching out, he mentioned the pastors and something like that, what, civic groups or what?
Yes, we have several pastors there. We have a representative from our our Hispanic Heritage Association, as well as a representative from the health department, different community programs.
Okay.
So we try to get someone from various backgrounds.
Kind of push it out. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Very good report. Very good. All right, members of the board, we have a motion to approve the consent items as printed.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Any question or comment? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And I see none. Thank you. Action items. School Board Policy 4.603.
Yes, sir. Policy 4.603 governs the district's promotion and retention of students. This amendment replaces our existing language with TSBA's recommended language. The amendment also makes our policy align with the new third grade retention law and corresponding state Board of Education rules. I do want to point out that this new policy governs all retention and not just the third grade retention law, even though that is included. And we are recommending approval of this policy as presented.
All right, we have a motion to approve policy 4.603, promotion and retention, on first reading.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd. Now, any question or comment?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Settles.
So this is one of those twist your arm policies? Am I getting it right?
So it does align with the State Board of Education rule, and so it does align with the laws put forth there. And that's why I specified we did separate, and the policy does separate third grade specifically from our regular practice of
I
promotion.
was looking at that, the policy that we previously had in place, it was like 100% marked out. I mean, like every line. So this is a whole total rewrite so that we are in compliance with what the state determines is the best policy as far as the third grade retention. From my information, at what grade do we start really seriously considering retention?
So I would say historically that's been a practice that has been done more in the younger grades than the older grades. And historically it's not a practice that we have used in wide capacity. It has been always a joint decision between the principals, the parents, the stakeholders, even though the school does have that ultimate authority of whether or not to promote a student, it's always been one that's been used, I would say, more sparingly, especially since we have such a robust intervention program. Now, I do want to point out that obviously there's been a lot of chatter and talk about the third grade law, and there is always the opportunity come January when General Assembly is back in session that there could be changes made to it. And if so, we may have to change that section of the policy, but I would not expect the rest of the policy to change. What this policy does do is it increases parent notification time. Our previous policy, I believe, said 6 weeks of notification if we thought a child may need to be retained. This backs that up to February 1st, gives them a little more notice that this is something on the radar. And that applies not just to third grade, but to every possible retention.
And the third grade is the group that's being, I don't like to use the word targeted, but that's our that's our kind of cutoff. And I noticed that it's coming at this time. The third graders, those that are third graders now, were, and I'm not real good on adding and subtracting, they were kindergartners or first graders at the most at the beginning of the COVID situation, when most of the learning was done at home with the internet now, right? Am I getting it right?
Correct.
Okay, and so now, what the state has decided is that those third graders that started during the time of coronavirus restrictions are going to be our test. So when they test on this one day, that will determine whether they can be retained or proceed to the next grade. Am I getting it right? Am I kind of?
Yes, sir, under the current law. And then, as the current law states, there's, I think, 6 exceptions to that, meaning summer school attendance, tutoring, or a combination of both, possible retesting, or if there's a few other factors that
There's some remedies
such as if it's a student with a disability or a suspected disability, if they're an English language learner who's been in the country less than 2 years, or if they've been previously retained. So those are the 6 exceptions per se to the policy. And as our policy does point out, there is an appeal process. And I'll note there's 2 appeal processes. There's the appeal process for I don't want to say typical, but a retention that we may more be accustomed to, that they appeal to us at the district level. And then there's a separate appeal process at the state level if it's in regards to the third grade law.
And we push the information, or we will be pushing that information out to the parents concerning the appeals process, et cetera, that goes along with this law that the state is telling us to implement.
Absolutely. So we have been alerting our parents from day one. And I said that's something I'm really proud of is our team and Miss Arnett and her team started sending notices home to parents the first day of third grade that this was coming. We've held a parent meeting via Zoom. We held a second meeting, 2 meetings last month, specifically on this topic that was really well attended. Parent conferences were today. I can imagine it was very much a topic of conversation. We provided information to our third grade teachers so they had the right information to make sure they were speaking to parents. And we'll do more meetings in the spring to make sure parents are fully informed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Richardson?
if I might, thank you. And so if we remove the language in theory about the third grade retention, the rest and residue of that in the body of what we're looking at tonight, that would be beneficial to students and parents in the school. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I need you to repeat that question.
Sure, sure. So if we just ignore the third grade retention questions that members may have and look at the rest and residue of the policy change, would we say that that is a good thing for students as well as parents?
So I would say if you take the third grade retention piece out, it does provide more notice to parents in an earlier time frame than we have done previously.
Very well, thank you.
Yes, I would say that the sooner the better. I mean, I think February 1st, was it February 1st?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that is, that's plenty of time. That's plenty of notice to say something needs to be done and we've got to do it now. Yeah.
Mr. Ballard and then Ms. Moore.
So I know one of the things that the commissioner brought up when we had the meeting was that there really is no measure of how this is going to impact the schools as far as a few or many. And when that comes about, we decide that it's going to be many, or we learn that it's going to be many, we're not going to be ready, or maybe you can reassure me, we're going to be ready for the tutors that are going to be needed, the classroom time, the remediation is going to take place so they don't have to stay back. That's an unknown, as I understood it. And so I'm just singing to the choir here, I know, but...
It very much is an unknown, and it's something we're planning for now. So I know Ms. Arnett's team has already started planning for summer school. Of course, we do already have 10 all-core tutors in place. Under the new law, we will have to change how they're used to make sure that, again, right now they're focused on every grade level. We may have to kind of narrow that focus. That's something we're going to have to work through. Of course, our spots in summer school, we have always worked to take every student who wants to be part of summer school, make sure they have a slot. That, of course, is dependent on the number of staff we have. So there's a lot of variables there. So Ms. Arnett, and I don't know if you want to speak to it, you can, has actually developed a timeline that she's working through right now that lays out in January, we're going to start recruiting teachers. And so we can really start lining that up so that we know exactly how many spots we have, how many we can facilitate, and then as information comes in, we can start working with parents about what is the best option for their family. And I've been very clear with families, if this is something, and we started telling them today, February 1st is what the state board says. Again, we started having conversations today. These are things you need to be looking for as you're meeting with your children and your child's teacher. But we're telling them, if we think that there's a possibility, you need to be planning now for summer school. That is going to be probably one of our best bets to make sure that we can move successfully on to the fourth grade.
Ms. Moore?
So I've been pretty public and clear about my frustration with this new third grade retention law, and I appreciate Mr. Studdle's comments about it. And I think you could probably tell from the long delay before anyone made the motion to approve this that we're all frustrated by it. So to the specific language of the policy, I found it a little bit confusing, especially in the appeals process part, because there's a lot of time limits there, 14 days, 13 days, or 30 days, 14 days. And I think that timeline is really aimed at the more traditional retention schedule where we're starting in February and giving people a chance to do this. Because I'm just thinking if we start this appeal process, we don't know who these kids are who are going, possibly the third graders, because, 60-something% of our kids, we don't track in February. Like you're not on par to pass this. These are surprises, some of them. So if you follow this timeline and we don't get the TCAP score back till late May, by the time the appeal process is done, you're already into fourth grade. So I was a little just curious about how these two things play together. So one question I had is, especially given our concerns about the third grade part of the law and the fact that it might be amended or changed come the new legislative session, we hope, does it make sense to pull this into two policies and have one that's our more traditional, early in the year process for retention, and then a separate policy that's handling this new law, particularly with regard to our third graders. And I know there's probably would be some redundancy to it, but it might make it easier for us to amend. It might make it easier for us to fuss about, I guess, if it's a separate policy, because, you know, as Mr. Richardson said, the rest of this, it's what we do anyway, and that's not being forced on us. That's a benefit to the children. So I just want to float that idea, or if this just needs to be revised so that those timelines are clear, that they're just not for the new third grade stuff. I don't know the best way to handle it, but I think some of the language in here, it doesn't map as well onto this new third grade requirement.
Yeah, so either of those is a viable option. It's up to the board's preference. I know in other policies, we do have kind of an add-on or an additional policy. So in this case, it would just be 4.6031. That's typically how we number policies that align to another policy that's similar. So it really is up to the board on whether you would like to see this in one policy with clarified language that more clearly separates the third grade retention from non-third grade TCAP retention, versus having two separate policies. But we can do whatever the board's pleasure is with that.
And I have one more question. So, you know, we've been through this a lot the past few years about policies we have to pass that we're not really crazy about having to pass. What is the consequence of us not adopting a policy to implement this third grade retention law? Do we lose funding from the state? Does it affect?
I don't think there is any there hasn't been any talk of any financial implications for not passing the policy. I think the concern is that we don't have anything public facing to advise the public on how third grade retention will be handled. I know we're doing an excellent job of communicating it to parents, but if a parent wanted to go refer back, I can't remember what the timeline was to appeal, or I lost that paper, it's very easy to go to our website and search for policies they can just search in retention under our policies and it will come up. If we did not have a policy on our website, then the public would have no idea how we were going to handle it. So that's the downside of not having a policy. And again, even if we don't have a policy, the law and the state board rule, which has the force of law, are still in effect. So it doesn't negate the district's duty to have to retain students. So.
Yeah, so we're going to do it regardless of whether this policy is there. So having the policy at least gives us a clear map of how it works, so everyone's on the same page. Understood. Thank you.
And the third grade is the only grade that the state is looking at, and that has to do with TCAP testing. Am I right?
That's the baseline. So there is a provision in the law that refers to fourth grade for students who were promoted in third grade under one of the exceptions, meaning they went to summer school, they went to tutoring, one of those options, and did not make significant progress. There is a provision in the law that says they would be flagged for retention and need to be held back in fourth grade. There's some conversation there because there hasn't been as much communication about what significant progress means. And that's the language that's used, and that's additional clarification we've asked for as well. So it really starts with third grade, specifically this year, and then for students who may attend and not meet that state definition of significant progress, there would be a fourth grade kind of fail-safe, I guess would be the word the state would use on that. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but.
Is this law, or does it not have to be approved by the legislature?
So it's currently law. So it is approved, it has been voted on, it is signed, it is the current law of Tennessee.
Well, for some reason, I saw something on the news today or somewhere where there was a big discussion in the legislature with one of our local representatives in particular, questioning the validity of this.
And I think some of that conversation comes back to this board's actions with earlier expressing concerns, you know, and again, having the commissioner actually come and speak to our school board as well as Rutherford County. So I think our delegation in my conversations, and obviously your conversations as well, are very aware of the concerns, and I think they, there is that opportunity. They will be back in General Assembly before this passes. And so I do think that this is a conversation that will continue. And to Ms. Moore's point, perhaps splitting this into two policies may make any revisions we have to make easier if that law changes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I apologize, I'll stop talking eventually tonight, but I agree with Ms. Moore. I believe that having two separate policies is both prudent and also helpful for parents who may be searching to get information and may get confused by third grade retention versus retention overall. So I believe that to be the more prudent course of action. I'm not sure if that should be in the form of an amendment at this point. So looking at counsel who is nodding in the affirmative, I would move at this point to amend the motion to split this policy into two different provisions, one for the purposes of third grade retention and one for the purposes of retention in toto.
Well, we have to act on this motion first.
No, we can act on the
Move for the amendment first. And
the amendment to the motion. So we have an amendment proposed by Mr. Richardson. Now, do we have a second to that amendment?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Dodd. Now, is there any discussion on the amendment? Ms. Moore?
I mean, so I want to make sure I give Ms. Taylor a chance to talk about this, because I know we had a little bit of communication about it, and I think there were some concerns about redundancy if we did two policies. So can you talk about just practically what it would mean for us to do two policies? I like the idea, but that may just be in theory, so.
I mean, it is, of course, some of the considerations regarding when a student would be identified to be retained might be duplicative in both policies. It's not a huge deal. It's just the language in the two policies might be the same. I mean, it's.
Do you see an advantage to splitting it out if we are going to have to revise this, or just even for parental clarity?
Yeah, I think clarity, it would be probably more clear to split it into two policies, especially for specifically those third grade parents who want to know how their exact process is going to work, especially because this is something new and it's the first year that it's going to be done. So I think separating it, especially concerning the appeals, because the Department of Education's appeal timeline is different than Murfreesboro City Schools. So I think having it separate probably would be easier.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to amend the policy. So now we need to vote on the amendment to the policy.
you're amending.
Correct, Mr. Taylor?
I
think he's amending the motion.
He
Yeah,
amended
that's
his
what I mean.
motion, yes.
What did I say, the policy, I
Yeah.
meant the motion.
I think Mr. Richardson's motion, amended motion, would be to approve the policy split in two.
Yes, ma'am, that'd be
So
correct.
now.
That's what you're
we have a
voting
motion
on.
and a second, so all in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? And I see none. Now, we now will vote on the policy as amended.
Well,
We have to
Next
vote on the,
meeting.
We're not,
I don't have it amended in two yet.
we'll have to see the two.
so we have to, but we still have
See the
to,
new policy.
we have to vote on the original
So at the
motion.
next regular scheduled board meeting, I think what the motion that Mr. Richardson made was to approve what Dr. Duke has presented, with the caveat that it'll be split into two at the next board meeting. So at the next regular board meeting, you'll have 4.603 and 4.6031 to vote on individually.
And I hate to be a stickler, but you still have a motion that hadn't been acted on, which is the primary motion. So we have to,
He amended that primary motion.
so when we voted on the amendment that he had, that put us voting on the amendment, I mean, the original motion, right?
Who made the motion?
No?
I thought
Oh, I
He was-
did. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't want to
Who made
claim
the
it.
fir-
I
who-
did, though. Yeah.
Amanda did.
She brought up the idea and he put it in a motion
No,
form.
but the original
The
motion.
original motion, she
yeah.
put it,
You were
yes.
the first?
Took it for the team. Yeah.
Yes.
You were the
she-
first?
Yes.
So, yeah, Ms. Moore would have to amend her motion.
Okay.
I need to amend it? Okay, I would like to amend my motion to approve this policy, to amend it to be split into two separate policies. That's my motion. And then we'll review those two policies at the next board meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, now, we have a motion and a second. Now, is there any more discussion?
I hope
I
not.
apologize. I thought Mr. Richardson made the first motion and Ms. Moore seconded. I had it.
I was inspired.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? There is none. Next item.
Oh, boy.
Healthcare grant.
Parliamentary.
On to more pleasant topics, maybe. We have a budget amendment that budgets the new school-based healthcare solutions network grant in the general purpose school funds. This grant will fund 3 full-time mental health and wellness transitional coaches who will provide individual, group therapy, assessments, and consultations at Bradley Academy, Mitchell Nilsson, and Reeves Rogers Elementary School. This is a 5-year grant, and we are budgeting the first year of the grant with future years' funding coming through the typical budget process. The privately funded grant for the 5 years will be a total of $1,417,128. Our anticipated start date for these employees will be January of 2023, and we'll begin searching for candidates after the board approval. I am going to ask Ms. Kim Frank to the podium to give the board some brief information around this program, which will help us continue to reach our strategic plan goal of having 100% coverage in all schools each day for mental health providers. So Ms. Frank was instrumental in obtaining this $1.4 million, and so I'd like her to talk a little bit about what the program will entail.
I think you covered it. This grant will provide a full-time mental health counselor at Bradley Academy, Mitchell Nilsson Schools, and Reeves Rogers. Those schools were selected for the grant based on attendance concerns, based on suspension rates, based on calls for crisis. All of those things indicate or what we would consider early warning signals that would suggest that they could really benefit from additional mental health support. We will continue our positive relationships with Centerstone and STARS, and this grant will allow us to have a net increase of not only services, but of the type of services that children will receive. Because these will be our employees, the grant provides that they can see children individually, but that they can also see children in small groups, and that they can also support teachers through consultation. So if they are working with a student individually or in small group, they can connect with the teacher to see, are you seeing a change in their behavior in the classroom? Or are there things that you see in the classroom that perhaps we need to address in either an individual session or a small group session? And because they're our employees, they'll also be able to participate in the whole school initiatives that we have at Tier 1. That's what we do for all students. So it will give us those 3 schools great latitude in how they support students. Another benefit is that a student who has great need would be able to be seen weekly individually and also in small group with that consultation part.
Question. This is a grant for 5 years, so therefore that means we'll not see any other budget additions for 5 years pertaining to this program.
So in the budget tonight, we budgeted for this first year so we could start in January, but because it's a 5-year grant, and what we will do is beginning in April, when we budget for next year, we will budget this as part of the line, just like we would in previous grants. I don't know if Ms. Williams, you want to speak to that, but the goal would be not to bring it as a separate item, but just part of the entire budget package for the next.
And the 1.4 will take care of the total program for 5 years.
Yes, sir. So if you take the two 280, let me pull it up,
Well, okay.
the amount that's there this year, I'm sorry, the 283,000 this year times the 5 years will give us the 1.4 million.
Now, is this for both Mitchell Nelson schools or just the elementary?
Yes, sir, it's for both. That person will support all Mitchell Nelson School students.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Will they service the other schools if there's a need?
They will not, but what will happen, what we anticipate will happen, Ms. Long, over the course of the spring, is that as these full-time providers take over some of the children who are being seen by either Centerstone or some of our employees, that will free up some space in caseloads for those providers to increase their caseload at other schools. So we anticipate a net increase at these 3 schools, but across the spring, we expect that we'll see an increase of availability of services or access to services across other schools.
So more hands on deck.
Yes, sir.
That's great.
One of the things I will point out, and one of the things I spoke, and I see Ms. Shields back there, because obviously her school will be one of the schools impacted that we really want to make sure of, is that at those 3 schools specifically, which are schools that we selected for a reason, that, again, it is that net gain. So it's not we're going to put someone in and take someone out, even though it may look that way. I'll use Bradley for an example. Right now, I believe they have a service provider there twice a week, maybe, but so this would give them 5 days a week, which is a 3-day week gain. So even though we may move that person who's doing 2 days a week out, will be someone in that building every day available to see students on a consistent basis. Yeah. And what we really are excited about, as she said, is because they'll be our employees, they will not just be an outside service provider coming in, providing a service and leaving. They will be part of the school community, part of that school faculty, and really able to, we hope, move entire shifts in the building from the tier 1 level all the way to our students who need individual supports.
One more question. Will there be parent support, family support as far as, a student who needs that additional support? Will they be bringing in family units in order to support that child?
It is a comprehensive program. Unlike other grants that we've written where we created what we wanted the vision to be, this is a grant where we will be implementing an evidence-based program, that the grantors have provided, but there is that provision to support families.
Great, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Can you say that dollar amount one more time?
It's over 5 years. It's $1,417,417. Is that right?
$1,417,128.
Oh, that's music to my ears. But seriously, I want to thank you for all of the work that you've done to get this and all of the work central office has done to get this done. I want to thank you for the work that you've done for years here at MCS. And I want to be very clear that this grant, this program, will change lives.
Yeah, it will.
And it will change lives for decades to come. And that's because of all of you out there.
Yeah.
So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, we've had a lot of discussion. We just haven't had a motion yet.
I move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Ballard.
One quick question, the mental health and traditional, or the wellness coaches, what is the certification of a mental health coach?
It's a great question, Mr. Ballard. The grant provides or specifies that we need to hire either a person who has licensure as a licensed professional counselor or licensed as a psychology. This is not school counseling. This is more of a professional counseling. Or we can also hire a person who, what they called an associate license, when what that means is that they're in the process of earning their license and they would just require supervision. So, that's a great way for us to grow our own, is to find people that are, finishing up their program and they've got all their clinical training, but what they still need is clinical hours, direct service hours. So under this grant, we could hire a person who's almost finished, and will get their licensure soon. So that, it does specify that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now back, we have a motion.
I
We
still
have a
move for
second.
approval.
I've got your motion. I need a second, though.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Now, is there any other discussion? I see nobody wanting to talk anymore on this topic. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, next item.
Our next item is the approval of our ESSER 2.0 budget, which we are presenting for approval. This is the final year of expending all of our ESSER 2.0 funds. The final deadline for expenditures is June 30th, 2023. The FY23 ESSER 2.0 amendment of $60,000 that we are presenting tonight is to rebudget funds from unspent professional development line to the equipment line item. The reallocated funds will be used to purchase Chromebooks to replace devices that will soon be going out of warranty. In addition, funding previously approved to employ one full-time equivalently math specialist will be used to employ one learning loss coordinator as well. Neither of these positions have been hired yet, and we are planning for both positions to start in March of 2023. There is no budget amendment facilitating this change. It is just a programmatic change. The learning loss coordinator will work to identify, develop, and implement instructional practices and strategies in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, the initial focus will be on overseeing our summer school program, our Tennessee All-Core tutoring, and other extended instructional contracts. And we are recommending approval of this budget amendment as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Any discussion? I see none. All in favor of the budget amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Next item. My computer has gone haywire, so I'm having a hard time keeping up.
Then I can help you out there, sir. We're on to reports and information, and the first piece of information we have tonight is we have presented the 2023-2024 budget timeline. Policy 2.200 requires that we develop a budget timeline and present to the board prior to January 1st of the current school year. The calendar is used to guide the coordinating of budgetary activities of individuals and groups, as well as collecting budget data and reviewing budget problems prior to being able to make budget decisions. The timeline we have provided ensures the budget is prepared in an efficient manner to meet both local and state requirements. And we are happy to answer any questions regarding the timeline that's been presented.
Do we have any questions on the timeline? It's getting to be that time of year again.
Believe it or not.
It is. All right.
Just a minute, Ms. Moore.
Is this pretty much what we have every year, or are there any changes to what we're used to doing for the timeline?
No, ma'am. There are no changes to what we have done previously. I will say we did put tentative workshop dates for the board in there. We will confirm those closer to April 11th is already a scheduled board meeting night. We would switch that to a workshop as we did last year. And for those that have been on the board for a while, you know, historically, sometimes we have done 2 nights back to back, and then last year we actually split those and did 2 nights over 2 weeks to give us some more time to take feedback from the board and implement. So that's how we presented it again this year. So it's very similar to what we did last year.
I like that week in between, personally.
All right, any other questions on the budget? We don't need approval
No,
of
sir.
that, do we? Okay. All right, next item.
All right, next is our Internet Safety Report. Board Policy 4.406 requires that the board provide information on our internet safety measures annually in a public meeting. So Ms. Zavisa is going to present tonight an overview of where we are with our current internet safety measures to inform the board, the public, and to fulfill the requirement of the policy.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening. Welcome.
Our policy, of course, 4406, is designed to protect staff and students. Covers the rules and ethics of our internet usage. These rules are also covered in our student and staff handbooks. In addition to protecting our students, the policy ensures our compliance with SIPA, the Child Internet Protection Act. This compliance is also a requirement for us to receive E-rate funding, which is the funding that ensures that we continue to update our network infrastructure. Our current provider and all software vendors adhere to SIPA standards. Our firewalls and various other cyber software security filters, restricts, logs access to avoid inappropriate content to ensure there's no unauthorized disclosure or the dissemination of personal information of minors. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Any question? I see none. Thank you, ma'am. Good report.
Thank you.
Substitute teacher report?
Yes, sir. I've asked Mr. Ringstaff to provide the board an update on where we are with substitute teachers this year briefly, to talk about numbers, and then for us as a board to discuss some possible options moving forward.
Thank you. We've just completed our third month of the school year, and it's an excellent time to give you a substitute teacher report. And just like every other occupation, there's a shortage of substitute teachers. But I'm here to tell you that the individuals who substitute teach in Murfreesboro City Schools, we have excellent substitute teachers who are in it for the right reasons. They love children and they want to take good care of our children, which is great. For the last several years, our average substitute fill rate is about 65 to 70%. So it hasn't changed very much during the last 2 or 3 years. October was a very difficult month for us. The flu hit us early, but we still averaged 66% fill rate. During these times of trial, because of the flu, we try to get our ESP personnel to help out whenever they can. Many of our ESP personnel are aspiring educators, and so they love to jump in and help us out whenever they can as substitute teachers. We're still doing interviews. We hired 10 in the last week. We have 10 interviews this week. So we're continuously hiring, trying to hire for our substitute teachers. Also, we're looking at alternative ways to get substitute teachers. And one way is our principals are asking our school parents, please consider substitute teaching in our schools. And we find these parents, these substitute teachers, they're dependable and they're vested in the school. So it really helps us in that regard. Another way is that when a teacher is out, they must put it into the system, and if a substitute cannot be found, the principal has 2 options. Put an educational assistant in that classroom, or if it's possible, to split that class, Ms. Jones' class, among the 3 other teachers, or team teachers on that grade level. Let's say there's 4 teachers. The other 3 will get 3 to 5 students, and they're going to get quality instruction that day, good quality instruction. So that right now, those are the 2 options that we have. I want to let you know that we are continuously searching for good substitute teachers.
One of the things I would like, and thank you for that, and I think one of the things Mr. Ringstaff pointed out that really is for us to consider is, again, some of the labor shortages we're seeing across all of our departments. That's not just here in our school system, but across our city and across the country. Subs are not immune to that. And again, one of the benefits we have is that many districts, of course, contract their subs out, and outside agencies do that. Our subs are our employees. They are Murfreesboro City Schools employees, which I think is a benefit because it gives us a little bit of that personal touch of, they're part of the team and part of the family. But as he said, we've really seen that number as far as that fill rate stay pretty consistent in that 65 to 70 range. And we're not seeing much over that. In our conversations, we would probably attribute that more to the labor force than other factors as if, pay or something like that. Of course, we always want to make sure we're competitive in our pay. But in this situation, we feel like that initial concern may be more of a labor force issue for now. So when he talked about the 2 options we have, of course, putting EAs in the classroom, that does also create sometimes an undue hardship, especially on days when there are large numbers of absences. So last week when we were really dealing with sickness, it wasn't just our teachers who were out, but those educational assistants were out as well in larger numbers because of that, which means at times we do have to look at options such as splitting a classroom. And as he said, taking a classroom of students and splitting those among the other teachers in that grade level. First, to make sure students are safe and to make sure ultimately that instruction continues, which is what we want to do as well. One of the things Mr. Ringstaff and I have been talking about, as well as with the senior leadership team, and we've talked to principals as well, is we think this is a practice that we may have to continue. And if we don't see an increase in the number of substitutes we have. One of the things we have talked about is if we're going to ask our classroom teachers to take on additional responsibilities, which we've had to do, and which, of course, because we have excellent employees, have done willingly and with a great attitude, because they understand that we're going to make sure our students are being taken care of. But one of the things we have considered is in those situations where we have to split a classroom is actually taking that substitute money and dividing that money out among the teachers who are taking the extra students. As a token to say, we understand that you are having to do additional work. You're looking at not only taking care of the needs of your classroom students and their transportation and those parent contacts, but now maybe 3 or 4 additional students that you have for that day and using it. Would it be a lot of money? It would not. It would be proportional to the number of students that they took for that day, but it would be a token to say, as we continue to look for subs, as we continue to recruit, and as we continue to walk down this path, here is another step to show you if we do need to go on this path, we would compensate for you. And so I don't know, did I miss anything there, Mr. Ringstaff, or anything you
No,
want to add
sir.
to that?
No, let's say that we had an average of $90 a day for substitute teachers. And if 3 teachers split Ms. Jones' class, that would be $30 for each of those teachers.
Mm-hmm.
How often are we having to do that?
I think if we did it one time, it's more often than we would like. That is the last resort, but some schools do it more than others.
And it isn't a practice that's happening a lot. I know Mr. Ringstaff surveyed the principals and talked, and there are some principals that haven't done it at all this year. Okay. There are some that may have to do it on a weekly basis, specifically maybe in some of our larger schools. And so, again, it really does fluctuate building to building. I think all principals look at that splitting classrooms as kind of a last resort method if we have to. But unfortunately, we're finding ourselves where we are having to do that. And our hope is we don't, but we would like to be prepared if we do need to.
Okay,
Ms. Dodd?
So I just want to be clear that if we do this, are we going to definitely make sure that we try to get a sub first? We don't let this become, something that is done instead of worrying about trying to find a sub, because ultimately finding a sub is the better situation. Is that what we're talking
Yes,
about?
ma'am. That is a requirement. All absences must be put into our sub system, and a sub must be trying to get, our attempt is to get a sub. The problem is when a teacher wakes up the morning of, or that their child wakes up not feeling well, the chances of getting a sub are slimmer at that time.
I know that. Yes, I've had that issue when my children were small, but it also, I don't know, if you're not a teacher, you don't understand how, just 3 or 4 more kids in the classroom, it's a lot more work. You would think, oh, what's 3 or 4 more kids? What's the big deal? It is a big deal.
Yeah.
And you don't know them as well.
Yeah, you don't know those children as well. They don't know you. They don't know what your expectations are, and so it creates a lot of extra work.
True.
So I did want to say that if you're not a teacher, you don't really get that. You may think, oh, 3 kids, that's not a big deal, but it is.
True.
Well, I will not disagree with you at all. However, on the flip side, I'd a whole lot rather my child be in a little bit of an overcrowded classroom than with somebody just coming in off the street that doesn't know beans about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. They will receive quality instruction. Yes, sir.
Now, this only applies to teachers, though. It does not apply to EAs or somebody that's pulled off from the EA job
Teachers.
to go to sub?
Teachers and special ed EAs, special ed EAs,
But not the regular ed.
not the regular EAs.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay.
And if I can clarify, because I know that's a conversation we have a lot is around there, and we are so thankful for our educational assistants because they truly do great work, and really they are the backbone to help keeping our buildings going, just like our transportation and our maintenance and our custodial crew. One of the things we really looked at with this as we start this kind of new way of thinking about how can we address this, we want to make sure that if we're tying compensation, we're tying it to additional work and not, for lack of a better word, replacement work. So whereas an educational assistant, we are basically changing their job for the day, and it is important for the board to know that our educational assistants do make more than a substitute does. So we are pulling them off to a different job, keeping them at their higher salary. Whereas, as Ms. Dodd pointed, with the teachers, it is additional work we may be giving them.
Yes,
If I
ma'am, Ms.
could-
Long.
If I could ask, how are we, is our salary competitive? Our sub pay, is it competitive to surrounding counties?
It was more competitive about 2 months ago. The nearby school district has increased their sub rate, yes.
Have we seen that affect our sub-fill rate, though?
No, ma'am.
So-
We've stayed steady.
Okay. So it doesn't seem that it's a comparative weight. I can go over here and make more. It's just,
Correct. I mean, I think our substitute teachers really enjoy subbing in Murfreesboro City Schools.
Can I ask, is it a lot different? I mean, what are we talking as far as the pay?
About $25 a day.
Okay.
$25 to $35 a day. They had some hard-to-fill schools that they increased their pay a little bit more.
You said surrounding, you mean close by surrounding?
Real close by.
Literally
Real close, yeah.
surrounding.
Real close by.
Like within a mile or two?
Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to, again, have Mr. Ringsack give an update tonight, talk to the board about kind of what we're thinking, where our kind of heads are as we continue to navigate this situation. I'm happy to take conversations or further feedback from the board after tonight, but my intent would be to us to continue to work on this, take any feedback the board may have, and then in December bring a more complete, comprehensive plan to the board.
Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about dollars. This is about value and seeing these educators take on additional tasks. It's about seeing our teachers and understanding that they're taking on more and showing the value that they have to them and compensating them for it as well. I think it's an incredible idea.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore?
I just want to be just clear, and I really like the way you introduced things tonight. I think it's very important if we go forward with this that we are very clear to our teachers that it is just a recognition and it's not a new expectation. That's my worry, that it's going to look like that, and I think Ms. Dodd raised that concern. So just being really clear to teachers that that's what it is. It's like understanding the reality, but that it's not setting a new expectation. And I also really appreciate that you laid out all the things we're doing to get at really what the root of this is, which is the lack of subs. And we're trying everything we can think of to keep, to increase that sub-fill rate so that this teacher split and that additional labor on our teachers is the last resort.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Duke. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate the information. Next item on the agenda is Dr. Duke's updated evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You all have a copy of Dr. Duke's 2021-22 Director's Evaluation. There were 3 parts to this evaluation. At the June 14th, 2022 board meeting, I presented the board with the calculated evaluation results. However, the board was unable to score Performance Objective 1 in Appendix C of the evaluation, which covers student achievement and growth, because TN Ready scores were not received in time. TN Ready scores have been received, and the 2021-22 school board has updated its evaluations based on that TN Ready data. Based on the updates, the mean score for Performance Objective 1 is 3.25. When calculating this into the previous evaluation, it makes the updated mean score for Appendix C 4.53. Each appendix was weighted for 1/3 of the overall evaluation score. Again, the weighted score for Appendix A was 1.61. The weighted score for Appendix B was 1.55. And the new weighted score for Appendix C is 1.49 for an overall evaluation score of 4.65, which rounded up equates to a performance of significantly above expectations. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding the updated evaluation.
I have no question but a comment. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. For a job well done, I think. I think this board has indicated that to you very overwhelmingly. So we're glad to have you with us, even though you didn't win the spelling bee. We won't.
And I was hopeful, Mr. Campbell, that we could go an entire night without bringing up the spelling bee.
No, but you did do very well.
Did well. Better than
I haven't
I
looked
did
up.
get out on round 1, and as I told Mr. Campbell that night, I am glad my contract does not include winning a spelling bee. So
I had to look up the meaning of the word you missed.
you and me both.
I did too, and I read it and still don't know what it means.
It was a fun night and a great night for Reed to succeed.
Thank you, sir. All right, anything else, Dr. New?
No, I have no updates for the board tonight.
All right, anything else to come before this board tonight? If not, it's too late to get in line to vote, but it's not too late to go home and watch results. Good luck. I'm sorry, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Suttles. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, ladies. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.